how was the Tower of Babel really built? It is one of the most debated structures in all of ancient history. And above all, this was not just a simple building. The Tower of Babel was a project of immense ambition, a plan that even in our time today is still hard to explain. Think about it. They were a civilization back then, just recovering after the Great Flood. There were no modern machines, no advanced tools, no cranes, no steel, and no computer-based engineering. But despite this, they decided to build a tower with the goal of reaching the heavens. Even at this point, many questions arise. How did they reach such heights without advanced tools? How were they able to make and move millions of bricks, if you think about it? In our time today, this would require entire factories. And what kind of knowledge did they use to keep a structure strong that, according to ancient stories, towered over the entire plain of Shinar? In this video, we will examine the mystery surrounding the Tower of Babel. We will look at modern studies, revisit ancient sources, and find out how people managed to make the construction of such an impossible project possible. And you will also find out here what happened as a result of what they did. But before we start, don't forget to like this video. This means a lot to us content creators. Thank you very much, and now let's get started. The story of the Tower of Babel is not just about a failed project or the mixing of languages. It is one of the central stories in the Old Testament's perspective on humanity and the world. After the flood, Noah's children were given the chance to start again. There was a clear command. They were told to multiply and fill the whole world, but instead of spreading out, the new humanity chose to stay in one place. Instead of following the command, they decided to gather together. They wanted to make a name for themselves, and the symbol of that ambition was a tower that would reach the heavens, in the place they considered the home of the gods. And this is where the bigger question comes in. How did they build it? How were they able to raise a tower so tall that even God himself intervened? To better understand this, let's go back to what Genesis 11 verses 1 and 2 says. According to this verse, the whole world at that time had one language and used the same words. As they traveled from the east, they came upon a wide plain in the land of Shinar, and there they settled. Shinar, according to almost all scholars, refers to the ancient region of Babylon in southern Mesopotamia. This is the land between the Tigris and Euphrates rivers, a vast and fertile plain that became the center of some of the earliest civilizations in the world. Based on linguistic evidence, archaeological findings, and ancient texts, experts agree that Shinar is the region where cities such as Babel, Babylon, Erech, Uruk, Akkad, and Calneh originated. All of these cities are in the same place. This is the very region described by the Bible as the first major urban center of the world after the flood. And here began one of humanity's most dangerous ambitions. The term Land of Shinar has been used since ancient times. It's not just the name of a place. In ancient records, Shinar refers specifically to the center of the Babylonian Empire, and in some instances it covers the entire region of Sumer. This is the place where occultism and astrology were born, beliefs that gradually strayed from true worship. Because of this, Babylon is considered the root of many apostate religions that spread to different parts of the world. If we put this in modern geography, the land of Shinar corresponds to a part of present-day southern Iraq. This is particularly in areas near the ruins, not far from the city of Hilah. But there is another important detail about Shinar that we cannot ignore. This is the land where the kingdom of Nimrod began, the first powerful leader in the whole world. In Genesis 10, verses 8 to 10, we read the following. Cush was the father of Nimrod, who became the first mighty man on earth. He was a mighty hunter before the Lord. That is why it is said, like Nimrod, a mighty hunter before the Lord. And the beginning of his kingdom was Babel, Erech, Akkad, and Calneh in the land of Shinar. When we examine this verse, it is clear that Nimrod was the one who founded the city of Babel, the very place where the Tower of Babel was built. This became the capital of his kingdom. This means that his government controlled everything, from planning, gathering resources, to the actual construction of the tower. And here the motive behind this project becomes even clearer. According to the Jewish historian Flavius Josephus, Nimrod was the very first person to become a true tyrant, a leader who wanted to have absolute control over his fellow men. According to Josephus, Nimrod openly rebelled against God. He taught people not to rely on their creator, but to trust only in their own strength. Josephus further adds that there were two main reasons why Nimrod built the Tower of Babel. One thing, first, to openly challenge God. Nimrod wanted to prove that humanity would never be destroyed again, even if there was another judgment like the flood. In his mind, if such a disaster happened again, the tower would be so tall that the water wouldn't be able to reach it. Second, to keep humanity united under his control. Nimrod was afraid that if people followed God's command to spread out and fill the whole world, he would lose his power over them. So instead of encouraging obedience, he promoted unity. But it was a unity based on rebellion. And under that leadership, the Tower of Babel was no longer just a building. It became a symbol of mankind's rebellion against God. And here, the story matches exactly what Genesis says. Chapter 11, verses 3 and 4. This verse says that the people talked among themselves and said to each other, "Come, let us make bricks and burn them thoroughly." They used brick instead of stone and bitumen for mortar. And they also said, "Come, let us build a city and a tower with its top reaching to the heavens. Let us make a name for ourselves so that we will not be scattered over the whole world." Brothers, when we examine this part, it is clear that you can see the hearts of the people in the plain of Shinar. Their intention was not just to build, their real goal was to exalt themselves, to reach the heavens using their own strength. They wanted to reach heaven not by obeying God, but by their own ability. And in the same story, it also shows how the tower was actually built. First, it was mentioned that they used bricks instead of stone. At first glance, this seems like a simple detail. But in reality, this is where an important truth about the geography and technology of ancient Shinar begins to emerge. The plains of Mesopotamia, where cities like Babel, Erech, and Akkad emerged, had almost no natural stone. It was not like Canaan, Egypt, or the mountainous regions in the north. In lower Mesopotamia, there were almost no quarries or large rock formations to be found that could be used for large buildings. But there was one thing that was abundant in that area. It was alluvial clay, the mud left behind by the Tigris and Euphrates rivers whenever they flooded. This material was soft, easy to shape, and very abundant. Because of this, clay became the foundation of almost all Mesopotamian architecture. So the people of Shinar didn't just rely on bricks. Instead, they developed a highly advanced process to improve and strengthen them. They refined the technology of brick making to build massive structures in a place where stone was almost a luxury that wasn't available. This is how brick making started. First, they would get wet clay from the ground, mixed with fine sediments left by the rivers. They mix it with water and knead it until the mixture becomes even and smooth. Sometimes they add vegetable fibers to make it stronger and less absorbent. Afterwards, the mixture is poured into standardized wooden molds. Because the molds are uniform, they can make thousands that are all the same size. This is a very important thing when building large and sturdy structures. Once molded, the bricks are left under the sun for several days until they dry. This kind of brick is enough for simple houses or interior walls, but it's not enough for tall buildings or structures. So for large projects like temples, walls, palaces, and step towers, they need a stronger type of brick. This is where the use of kilns comes in. The bricks are fired in closed kilns where the temperature can reach from 600 to 900 degrees Celsius. Mesopotamian ovens are usually round or square. They are heated using firewood, dried reeds, and charcoal. Inside the kiln, the intense heat changes the clay at the chemical level. The moisture inside is removed, and the brick becomes extremely hard. In this way, the once soft mud becomes a solid and durable material. It can bear an enormous amount of weight and support the height of a tower expected to reach the sky. The result of this process is a fire-baked brick that is extremely durable. It is not easily damaged by rain, wind, or the passage of time. It is also not easily eroded. Because of this type of brick became ideal for large construction projects. With the help of this technique, the ancient people of Shinar were able to build structures that were taller than any other known structure in the world at that time. And here, important evidence from modern archaeology comes in. A clear example of this is the Ziggurat of Ur, which is associated with King Uruk. This building is almost entirely made of clay bricks. Many of these bricks were fired in kilns and carefully placed on platforms with different levels, layer upon layer, going upwards. The same can be seen in the ruins of Babylon, especially in the area associated with what is called the Great Ziggurat, which some scholars believe is connected to the tradition of the Tower of Babel. In this place, a large number of baked bricks were found. Some of them even have royal seals, marks that show which dynasty they were made in. The quantity and uniformity of these bricks are clear evidence of an industrial level process. This means it wasn't just made one at a time. Thousands of identical bricks were produced simultaneously for large construction projects. And this wasn't only seen in Babylon. In other cities in the region, remains of ancient ovens, clay deposits, workshops, and baked bricks with various inscriptions have been found. All of these are proof that their production was systematic and organized. All this evidence shows that the choice of fire-baked brick was not accidental, and certainly not sudden. This was the only practical option in a region that had almost no stone, and at the same time it was also the most effective way to build tall structures. Brick is lighter than stone, the size is uniform, and once it's fired, it's extremely hard and durable. Because of this, it became possible to build large platforms and step towers that could reach heights unmatched by other civilizations at that time. This is the reason why Mesopotamian architecture is unique. Their temples, walls, and palaces did not resemble the buildings in Egypt or Canaan. They had their own style, a style built from millions of carefully baked bricks, arranged with precise measurements and proper placement. So when the Bible says that those people used fire-baked bricks instead of stone, it's not just a symbolic statement. This is an exact description of a reality that archaeology now confirms. A civilization skilled in the technology of baked brick. And because of this, they were able to build monumental cities in a place where stone was almost non-existent. The second important detail mentioned in the story is asphalt instead of mortar. At first, this might seem like a small thing, but in reality, this is where you can see one of the most important aspects of Mesopotamian engineering. Asphalt, also known as bitumen, is a dark, thick, and sticky material that naturally comes out of the ground in areas rich in hydrocarbons. The land of Shinar, which corresponds to present-day Iraq, sits on top of one of the largest oil basins in the world, and this modern reality directly matches what is described in the ancient texts. While Iraq is now known as an oil-producing country, in ancient times there was already natural bitumen that would spontaneously rise to the surface of the ground. The asphalt used by builders back then was like semi-solid petroleum. You can see it in the form of pools or coming out of cracks in the ground. The Mesopotamians collected it in containers, heated it to make it thinner, and then used it as a very strong adhesive. Once used, the asphalt hardens again and provides protection for the entire structure against moisture from the ground, which is very important in Mesopotamia, where floods are common and high humidity can destroy buildings in a short period of time. Their process was technical, but simple and effective. Once the asphalt was collected, it was heated over an open fire until it liquefied. When it was ready to be applied, it was placed between the bricks like an adhesive. And when it cooled down again, it returned to a hard and sticky form that provided a very strong bond between the bricks. This process is perfect for tall and multi-level buildings. Bitumen is not just an adhesive, it provides structural cohesion and at the same time protects the bricks from direct water exposure. It is also used to waterproof foundations, seal joints, coat the exterior parts of buildings, and strengthen walls exposed to rain and wind. Archaeology confirms this kind of use in many Mesopotamian cities such as Kish, Lagash, Larsa, Sippar, and Babylon, where walls, canals, and platforms made of bricks joined together with a clear layer of hardened bitumen were found. In Babylon especially, it can be seen that bitumen was not just an additional material. It was one of the core elements of their engineering. Its presence in architectural remains is clear proof that Mesopotamian builders knew how to control, process, and use this material, not just in small amounts, but in large quantities and with precise application. If we use a modern comparison, ancient bitumen functioned much like the high-adhesion waterproof cement we have today. It didn't just bind the bricks together, it sealed the entire structure. The fact that asphalt came directly from petroleum shows that this is one of the earliest recorded uses of petroleum-based materials in the entire history of human construction. And because this material was abundant in the region of Shinar, it became an important ingredient in building monumental cities, especially in a place where there was almost no stone, traditional mortar, or other common construction materials. So when the text mentions that asphalt was used instead of mortar, it's not a minor detail. This is an exact description of the Mesopotamian construction method, the very system that made it possible to build the Tower of Babel. We can easily picture the scene. The people in Shinar were placing heated natural asphalt between the fire-baked bricks. They used it as a waterproof adhesive that, when it hardened, gave strength, grip, and durability to the massive walls. This system was part of the regular brick-making process. The clay mixed with vegetable fibers was molded, dried under the sun, and then fired in kilns until it reached uniform size and was strong enough to bear the weight of the tower's construction. Because of this, experts are united in one conclusion. The Tower of Babel was most likely a ziggurat, a stepped structure made up of stacked platforms. Its interior was solid, and it had external ramps or staircases used to reach the sanctuary at the very top. There is a clear and modern example that helps us understand what this tower looked like. This is the Ziggurat of Ur, located in southern Iraq, and it is considered one of the most well-preserved structures of the ancient world. Although only the lower part of it remains today, the step design is still clearly visible. The walls made of fire-baked brick, the arrangement of the ramps in front, and the use of the same type of materials described in the biblical account. This ziggurat, which was dedicated to the moon god Sin, gives us a clear visual reference of what the Tower of Babel might have looked like. A massive rectangular base, ascending terraces that get smaller as they go higher, and at the top, a sanctuary or platform at the very peak. According to archaeological studies, building this kind of structure required thousands of workers. Specialized kilns that operate continuously are needed for making bricks. Containers of heated asphalt are needed to attach and seal each part. And temporary ramps are also needed on the sides of the building so materials can be brought up as construction continues to rise. Flavius Josephus also mentioned that the Tower of Babel reached an extraordinary height, and this statement matches information from ancient Babylonian tablets like the Esagila, which describe ziggurats that could reach almost 90 meters in height. This measurement fits perfectly with the monumental model. Edom and Enki, which many scholars consider as the possible historical reference for the tower mentioned in the scriptures. So when we look at the Ziggurat of Ur today, the step design, the solid core made of bricks held together by bituminous materials, the fire-baked exterior walls, and the ramp system, we get a clear and concrete picture of what the structure built by the Sumerians might have looked like. These are the ancient people of the plains of Shinar. Let's now imagine the whole picture. A massive building constructed with millions of fire-baked bricks, reinforced with asphalt, and following the Mesopotamian architectural tradition, a style specifically designed to build tall temples that are both impressive to the eye and intimidating in their size and technical mastery. This picture becomes even clearer when we include the ancient Jewish traditions. According to some midrashim, the construction of the tower took many years. It was a continuous and unceasing process. The workers took turns working day and night to ensure that the construction would never stop at any time. According to these accounts, there were entire caravans tirelessly bringing fire-baked bricks, beams, tools, and containers of heated asphalt. While this was happening, there were long lines of workers going up and down the side ramps carrying materials to the higher parts of the building. The tower gradually rose, layer upon layer, level by level. Tradition also says that this project was so massive that if a worker slipped or fell from above, it was almost ignored. But if a single brick was dropped and shattered on the ground, that was what truly saddened everyone. Why? Because making, firing, and lifting even just one single brick to such a height required an enormous amount of effort. When it broke, it was considered a great loss to the entire project. Although these stories are part of tradition, they help us imagine the true scale of the operation. Thousands of people work together at the same time. Some mold the clay, some watch over the kilns, some heat the asphalt, some carry heavy loads, and some raise platforms that reach even higher into the sky. If we compare this image to historical data about the large Mesopotamian ziggurats, like the ziggurats in Babylon, everything becomes more believable. According to Babylonian inscriptions, the reconstruction of the ziggurats in Babylon took about 88 years. If that's the case, it's not hard to imagine that a structure like the Tower of Babel, which was built in an even earlier time, also required several decades of continuous work before it finally rose above the plains of Shinar. And here, it's important to remember one thing. Those people had one language. They were a completely united people, and their goal was clear: to reach heaven through their own construction. In Genesis chapter 11, verses 5 and 6, it says, "And the Lord came down to see the city and the tower which the children of men built. And the Lord said, Behold, the people are one, and they all have one language. And this is only the beginning of what they will do. And now nothing will be impossible for them in whatever they plan to do." From this statement in the Bible, an important question arises. What was the form of that one language used by the people in Shinar? And what were the elements that allowed them to remain united in such a huge and difficult project? Although the scriptures do not specify exactly what that language was, some scholars say that before people spread out, there may have been a primitive and unified form of communication, a single language system that existed before the Semitic languages were divided. And that single language, together with a single purpose, became the foundation of one of the most ambitious projects in all of human history. Based on the archaeological context of the Fertile Crescent, some linguists say that the earliest language may have had features that later became part of languages such as Akkadian, or the early forms of Afro-Asiatic languages. There are also other specialists who use Sumerian as an indirect reference, not because it was the exact language spoken in Babel, but because it is the oldest documented written language in Mesopotamia. Because of this, we better understand how communication systems were organized in the earliest cities of the world. Sumerian, with its vast vocabulary for architecture, measurement, materials, and administration, shows the kind of language capable of running a massive project like a ziggurat. It is a language with enough detail and precision to coordinate thousands of people toward a single goal. Whatever the exact form of the original language was, what the text emphasizes is clear. Everyone in Shinar understood each other without barriers, without confusion among brothers. There were no mistakes in communication, and every stage of work was carried out precisely and simultaneously. Because of a single language, it became possible to properly schedule work shifts, monitor the brick baking kilns, direct the transport caravans, assign simultaneous tasks, and carefully plan the raising of each new platform of the tower. With the help of a single communication system, communication remained intact, and they moved as if they were one body, thousands of hands, one direction, one goal, raising the tower continuously, level by level, without rest. And this is exactly what the text in the Bible emphasizes when it shows that God came down to observe the city and the tower that man was building. According to the story, when God saw the effectiveness, determination, and complete unity of the people, he said that with one language, nothing could stop them from accomplishing whatever they planned, even building a structure with the goal of reaching the heavens. And this is where the crucial moment happened. God did not destroy the tower. Instead, he intervened with the most important element that gave them strength as a collective force, their language. Let us read Genesis 11:7-9. Come, let us go down and confuse their language so that they will not understand each other's speech. So the Lord scattered them from there over the face of the whole earth, and they stopped building the city. That is why it was called Babel, because there the Lord confused the language of the whole earth, and from there he scattered them over the face of the whole world. With these words, the decisive moment of the story began. The tower project was stopped, not because of a lack of materials, not because of human exhaustion, and certainly not because of a lack of technical ability. It stopped because communication was cut off, the very foundation of their unity. Before that event, the people of Shinar worked as a fully integrated community. The flow of commands was smooth. The foreman gave exact instructions. The kiln tenders received clear technical details. The caravans knew when to leave and what to bring, and the workers at every level understood exactly which layer was to be raised next. The entire system relied on a single language that synchronized every movement. But when God confused their language, that perfect mechanism suddenly stopped. The builder could no longer understand the supervisor. One group could no longer understand the loading orders. Those climbing the ramps and those carrying the heated asphalt could no longer keep up with the pace of those on top of the structure. In an instant, the tower being raised by all of humanity came to a halt, not because of stone, brick, or asphalt, but because of the loss of a single language. The once perfectly unified work suddenly turned into chaos. Because of the loss of clear communication, it became impossible to continue the construction. A project as massive as the tower relies heavily on precise and unified instructions. And when that was lost, everything came to a halt. Immediately, the people separated from each other. They naturally sought out those they could understand, and from there, small groups were formed based on language. These groups, no longer able to work or live together as before, began to spread out. According to the text, they were scattered throughout the world. This means that entire communities left the plains of Shinar and traveled in different directions to look for new places to live. This is where the emergence of different languages and cultures in the ancient world began. In place of the former complete unity, the name Babel remained as a reminder of this event. In Akkadian, Babylon means gate of God. But in the account of the Hebrews, it is associated with the word Baal, which means to confuse, as a reminder that here the single language of humanity ended. From that moment on, construction of the city and the tower ceased. According to some ancient records, the structure remained unfinished for a long time. There were kings who tried to restore or finish it, but none succeeded. Eventually, it ended up in ruins. The walls collapsed, the foundations were destroyed, and the terraces fell down. Even the powerful empires that came afterward failed to restore it to its former state. And in the end, the tower ultimately remained only a memory of an unfulfilled ambition. Beloved brothers and sisters, the story of the Tower of Babel is a reminder. Whatever man builds against God, no matter how big, tall, or impressive it may be, will never prevail. And this is where our video ends.